Welcome back to Champion News Talk Radio, brought to you by championnews.net. This is Carol Parisi. Our founder, Jack Roeser, and myself have the privilege of having Congressman Joe Waslh with us today. And we were talking about Barney Frank and this debt and unsecured mortgage liabilities. And I just want to start this off by saying I remember Barney Frank clearly saying there is no problem with Fannie and Freddie, that there was no problem. But now, Joe, you know, the Tea Party is the problem, according to our president. They're terrorists, and this downgrade from the S&P is because of the Tea Party. What do you have to say on that?
Well, you both know that when you've run out of arguments and you've run out of any intellectual debate, you call your opponents haters and liars, and that's where they are right now. Look, step back for a moment and imagine that all of us troublesome Republicans didn't take over the House, and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats still ran the House. In February or March this past year, we would have raised the debt ceiling $3, $4, $5 trillion without even thinking about it. We'd be spending money every single day. Thank God for these troublesome Tea Party conservatives, because even though, Carol Ann, I did not vote for the final debt ceiling deal. In fact, I spent most of the last month and a half voting no on darn near everything. We've changed the debate.
That was not a fault. That was a matter of integrity, period, on your part.
I appreciate that, Jack. But we've changed the debate. Now every American knows what the debt ceiling is. Now, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democratic president. We will not let you just raise this debt ceiling anymore without cuts and reforms. So I'm not happy with what happened because, as Jack rightly points out, it didn't change a thing when it comes to the debt crisis.
No.
But the debate has changed, and that's because a movement sent people like me to Congress to change it.
Right. And I remember clearly during the last campaign cycle.
Pick up on what he said originally here, that Obama would have gone in with another 4 or 5, 10
well, I was going to talk about trillion. And
if he had succeeded in doing that, he would have dug a hole we never would have gotten out of.
And that's where I was going, because I remember when you were campaigning, you're like, this is the most important election for my children, my grandchildren, and my unborn great-grandchildren. And that is exactly what we're speaking to. And I think the American people don't even know, for the most part, what a trillion is. We hear these arbitrary numbers like billion, trillion. I've heard something on a trillion, that if we spent $1 million every day from the day that Christ was born, $1 million every day, we still would have 700 and some odd years to be spending that $1 million, and that's for 1 trillion. So this president wanted to raise it 3 trillion. How could that work?
But understand, Carol and Jack, even the deal that Washington cut a couple weeks ago, that might cut $1 trillion over 10 years. Even with that deal, your government is still going to borrow 7 to 10 trillion over the next 10 years. We didn't cut. We attempted to slow the rate of growth a very little bit.
Well, you stopped the guy from doing a massive sin if you hadn't been elected.
Yes.
If they'd retained control, he would have run this thing over the cliff for sure.
I've got to step in here for a second, because outside of cut, cap, and balance, every single piece of legislation that they put forth did nothing but push us closer to that time where we will not be able to make our payments, and just brought us closer to default. That's the truth. In fact, Standard & Poor's and all the credit rating agencies, they talked with Congress. They told Congress what had to be done, and they didn't do it.
And in fact, Michael, they told us the one plan that met their criteria was cut, cap, and balance, which passed out of the House by 234 votes, included my balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, and it went over to the Senate, and Harry Reid just tabled it. Now, again, I'm not John Boehner, and John Boehner's got a tough job, but if Harry Reid had done that to me, I would have given him my cell phone, I would have walked away and said, come back to me when you're serious. He should have done that with the president. But instead, we got into this little dance that Washington always does, and you end up with a deal that makes everybody feel good, but it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
The press took off on that, and they said well, these intransigent people like you stopped a deal from being made where there should have been a compromise.
Yeah.
That's a compromise with the devil.
Yeah.
They've already carried this financial tragedy to the edge of the cliff, and they want to compromise you, over the edge of the cliff. You don't compromise with a total tragedy like this.
But Jack, the government would have shut down, right, Joe? Congressman
no.
Waslh, wouldn't the whole government
we'd be
have
better off. I can remember the last time this happened, and people walked around saying, "Have you noticed the government? Any problems now?" You can't. Everybody said, "I can't tell the difference."
Right.
I've gotten in trouble the last few months because I've said what's on my mind, me. and when, again, I firmly believe this president is in over his head. Jack, he's never run anything in his life. He doesn't understand how business works. He has surrounded himself with academics. He's got the lowest percentage of high-level officials who've ever worked in the private sector. This is no surprise. The economy, we talk about government spending needs to be cut. Republicans, Jack, run away from revenues. And I don't understand why we do. We do need revenues. We need a lot of revenues, but you get revenues by cutting taxes, cutting regulations, and as Senator Rubio in Florida said, by not increasing taxes, but increasing taxpayers. The economy's not growing.
Say that again, please, Congressman
You
Waslh.
increase government revenue, not by increasing taxes, but by increasing taxpayers, i.e. the economy has to grow.
Increasing tax rates is what is a failure.
Yes.
Taxes will increase if you give the people some a business environment that encourages them to take individual chances that they judge will make a profit they're going to pay a bigger tax on. The government has taken over so much of the operation of the entire economy. Take the example of what they've done with the schools.
Yeah.
Now, all the public schools are run by a bunch of bureaucrats, and they're run on our taxes. And the whole thing is set up so that actually the running of it has been put in the hands of the unions, just the same ones that bankrupted General Motors, only these are government unions. It's an even worse thing, as we see up in Wisconsin. But throughout the country, you've got a really big problem with the government continuing to spend all of this money. When you give $1,000 to the government in taxes, think what happened if you kept it. If you kept it, you would have spent that in ways that satisfied you for an education, we'll say, or whatever. But when the government gets it, it goes through a bunch of functionaries, all of whom are employees of the government. You're lucky if 300 of that $1,000 gets back to doing anything they wanted done. And then it's a choice of a bureaucrat. We're stuck with paying the salaries of a bunch of bureaucrats who are making decisions for us. We're paying for it, and we're paying their salaries for them to be arrogant and tell us what to do.
And look,
we're not a free economy in the way that they are running this thing.
Not at all.
Our collective judgments by real Americans are far more powerful than some college professor sitting there with Obama and having theories about how to spend our money.
You know, during the campaign and since I've been elected, it's typically people from Eastern Europe who've been in this country for 10 or 15 or 20 years. They'll come up to me and they're the most impassioned. Do you know where you're going? Do you understand where you're going? We've been there. It doesn't work. They are fired up because they know where this president's taking us.
We had a 14-year-old on the show a couple weeks ago.
From Lithuania,
From
2 years.
2 years he was here, and he says, I see this country going into socialism.
They understand it.
They understand it. You are exactly correct. You are
Yeah.
exactly correct.
Well, something that a lot of people don't understand is all of these czars that Obama has created, they've been very busy. They've been throwing out regulations that hit every piece of the private sector in America. They are straddling the throats of the business sector. Meanwhile, Obama's talking about jobs, but he's talking about government jobs.
I had a businessman.
This is the voice from the camera that we've been hearing.
I had a businessman come up to me at the end of my McHenry town hall who said in the last year and a half he's had to deal with 89 new OSHA regulations. 89
in a year.
In a year and a half.
On so many occasions. In fact, as I was getting ready this morning, sound bites of jobs. Congressman Walsh, Do you think this president is going to give us jobs, or do you think policy enacted by you and the other Republicans will help
The
create
government
jobs?
doesn't create a job. That's the point.
Except government jobs.
Except government jobs.
And we pay for that.
And the schools will never improve until parents have the power to choose.
And that
Period.
after the break.